Many doubted we'd ever see it, but here it is. The return to glory.
McDavid stops up. What a move. Shoots. Scores!
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year, 2020. Boy, did that last year go by fast, Robin?
Holy cow, yeah, it did.
I remember my dad saying as you get older, the years go by a lot quicker, and I used to think, that's not possible.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. It certainly is. Anyway, here we go. This is our first episode for the new year, 2020, and it's a fun one for us because you and I have known Ken Lowe and Barrie Stafford for a very, very long time.
Two people with a lot of history, a lot of great stories to tell after all the years they spent, in Kenny's case, with the Edmonton Eskimos and the Edmonton Oilers. In Barrie's case, the longtime trainer for the Oilers, the equipment manager, I should say, and a former University of Alberta Golden Bear. When you go back this far, there's stories to tell. Okay, so for Ken Lowe, briefly, Grey Cup, Eskimo history, Stanley Cup history. Also was, I'm sure he went to a few World Hockey Championships and probably won at that level. Went to the Olympics. It represented Canada. 2002 was part of that squad that won the gold medal finally for Team Canada in Salt Lake City. It's a huge, huge resume for Ken Lowe. Also in the Hall of Fame in terms of athletic therapists and training staff. Yes.
Barrie Stafford, also in the Hall of Fame in the same category.
Yes.
Barrie Stafford, CIS, way back then it would have been a CIAU championship.
Mm-hmm.
So he played at the university level. Then, of course, we'll get into it with him about how he got to the Edmonton Oilers, and he went through all 5 of those Stanley Cup championships. And then he follows right along the same route as Ken Lowe with trips to the World Hockey Championships, trips to, I think he's even a Spengler Cup winner, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day. It's these two guys, I'm telling you, it's a pleasure to know them. They've got a million stories, and we were happy to have them with us to tell us a few of those stories.
Well, what do you say? Let's go.
Yeah, let's roll, shall we? Guys, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you two guys in here that both Robin and I know so well. And were we at a golf tournament, Staffy, when you said, "Hey, we got to get on the podcast and have some fun"? Was that you that said that to me?
Yes, it was. Podcasts are the thing to do, and very happy to hear that you guys were together doing it. So we just wanted to be part of it.
Great.
At what point did you hear doing this would be fun?
Hey, anytime I can hang out with my good buddy Kenny Lowe, it's fun. So,
brother from another mother, of course.
Hey, before we start talking about the achievements for you guys are endless, and we could spend 40 minutes just talking about all of your achievements. But let's go back to how you got going a little bit. And Staffy, we'll start with you first and foremost. How you knew Slats in Banff? Is that how things kind of got rolling for you with the Oilers?
Yeah. I was a young guy. Banff's a very small town, and Glen Sather had a hockey school. We didn't really know Glen Sather at the time, but we were just young kids, and almost everybody that played hockey went to his hockey school. And, as we progressed over the years, I eventually started working for him as a counselor for the kids. And that was my experience with Glenn. That's how I got to know him and meet him. And then, I went off and tried to seek my my fortune in the hockey world. And I ended up in university playing hockey here in Edmonton for the Golden Bears. And at the time, before graduating, I sent some resumes out, and I sent one to the Oilers. And, of course, with the relationship with Glenn, they needed a trainer at the time, the Kamloops, I believe, Blazers. And so I applied, and he knew my family, and he knew that I was a hockey player and, those kind of things. So I went in and interviewed, and I got the job.
I have to ask, because you talked about those hockey schools in Banff. There's that story about Ryan Smith getting run over by somebody. Who ran him over? Was it Glenn Anderson that did that?
Yeah, it was Glenn Anderson. I think that was our '84 Canada Cup training camp. And
Okay.
once again, growing up in Banff as a small town, I knew the Smith family quite well, Ryan's mom and dad. And I knew Ryan. Ryan was just a young kid. I forget how old he was, 10 or 12, but he was a good kid, and he was a rink rat. And he still is a rink rat to this day. But so wherever we went, we always needed stick boys and kids that were, especially hanging around the rink. And so I just I brought him in to help us out as a stick boy.
Barrie, I got to ask, because it just slides off your tongue so quick. If you can play hockey for the Alberta Golden Bears, you can play hockey. Very few people reach that level. What's the difference between Barrie Stafford, the hockey player, and the guys good enough to go on to the level that you ended up working with for your whole career?
Wow, that's a good question. I'm very fortunate to have played. I don't take it lightly. I mean, I was lucky. I was on a great team. Came along at a good time. Our team had won 3 championships in a row. And although the first year, because I had a knee injury, I only played a few games the first year. But I was part of a dynasty, really, with Claire Drake, and just not understanding at the time how important what influence Claire Drake and Billy Moores had on my life and the lives of all our players. So there's similarities to me as a hockey player. Some of the better qualities I had as a player transferred into and helped me in my job working with hockey players. Although I never played in the NHL, I never coached a game in the NHL, but I did have a bit of a hockey player mentality in the early stages. But at the same time, it did get me in trouble a few times early on, because it took me a while to actually get into the thinking and the philosophies of what a trainer really does. And I learned to curb my enthusiasm, my temper, and aggressive nature. I mean, when you're a young guy and you have a bad temper and you're an aggressive person, that's okay when you're on the ice, but it doesn't work too well when you're working as a trainer in the NHL.
Now, Ken, in your situation, you did the football route before you did the hockey route. So how did you get hooked up with the Edmonton Eskimos? And then how did you do that transition from the Eskimos and winning Grey Cups over to the Oilers?
One of the ways was I was looking to do my master's. I don't know why I wanted to do a master's. I thought it was important. And my younger brother knew that U of A had a program. And they would be looking for a trainer. And so I sent my resume to Hugh Campbell. And
right.
I got the hire. But it was interesting because the one thing Hugh Campbell said to me that he was really impressed, and I can't remember the young player's name who passed away in '81 after the Grey Cup. He was killed in a car accident.
Is that Don Warrington?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Hugh had told me he was really impressed that both Kevin and Wayne, at that point Kevin's roommate, had showed up at his funeral.
Wow.
And that was really impressed Hugh, and that's why Hugh sort of like looked at me. But he said at the same time, he said, having your brother is detrimental to you getting the job. And I'm sitting there here in Edmonton, I'm going, why is that? And he said, because I sense you and your brother are very close. And what goes on in the Eskimo dressing room stays in the Eskimo dressing room. And I said, as a trainer, we know that have learned that many years ago. How I got over the Eskimos was this right-hand man of mine, or as he calls me, my brother from another mother. I knew that Peter Miller was leaving. Peter had told me about a month in advance that he was leaving. He didn't tell me where he was going, but he was leaving. I think we were at the CATA.
Oh, you're talking about how you came to the Oilers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool.
The transition.
Cool. Yeah.
And so I knew that Peter was leaving, but I never thought of myself moving over to the Oilers. I liked football, and to this day, I tell people if you take a garbage bag and you throw hockey injuries and soccer injuries and basketball injuries and baseball injuries, give it a good shake and you have football. And from a trainer, athletic trainer's perspective, that's a challenge. And but Barrie phoned me. I remember it was a Friday afternoon. I was up doing my hedges, and I was just about to go to training camp with my ninth training camp with the Eskimos. And Barrie had phoned me and said he had some names of people that he'd like to me talk, see him about, ask him, come and see me about them. And I said, sure. Not once did I realize he was reeling me in. And he gave me a couple names, and I can to this day, I can't remember who they were. But at the very end, he says,
But you remembered you were doing the hedges.
what's that? I remember I was doing the hedges. Yes, I remember how to get them done, because I'd go, hey, once you hit training camp, one more time. Yeah. And he threw it at me. And what about you? And I was taken back a little bit, because I did like football. And I said, let me think about it. And then I phoned my younger brother. And I said, Kevin, how would you like your brother be your trainer? And he said, I was hoping you'd take it. And I figured, oh, he reeled me in. Really good. And so I moved over there, and I'm so glad that I did. It was a great move I did. And I had known Barrie before that, but we've become a great friend, personal friend now.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Kenny. I just saw a clip this morning. Did Kevin refer to you as when you were breaking into the training trade as practicing on him a little bit?
Yeah.
I found that you wouldn't need to practice with Kevin the way he played the game as things would go in his career. Tell us about that. Are we talking you were a raw kid going into the training game and you'd tape him up, or what?
Yeah, basically that's what I do. Come home and try tape jobs on him, mostly the ankle, because an ankle is a tough job, and it's a skill that most ATs are really good at. And so I would come home and practice on him, that and the wrist jobs and stuff like that. And I guess I forget that now, but once he brought it up, oh yes, have him sit on the picnic table out back of the pool and taping his ankle and stuff like that. That's going way back. But when you ask me, how I got here, I think a lot of it was instrumental to him. Knowing that I wanted to do my master's, I wanted to get out of Quebec at the situation. At that point, I loved my job. I was the head AT at Concordia University, and here was an opportunity, to come to Alberta to work for the Eskimos and to do my master's, which I did. I finished, and then from that, Barrie lassoed me into moving over to the Oilers.
Let's talk about the run with the Oilers. Now, Kenny, you came in at the tail end of that while you had gone through the major part with the Edmonton Eskimos. And Staffy, you're right there from the get-go as they were getting rolling. That was a special group in that room. And we can open this up, and you guys can just jump all over each other however you want to answer these questions. But at what point did you always sense that the room had something special going on in there? Like, there just always seemed to be, you can walk into a room and you just know it's got a successful feeling about it. Kenny, when you dropped in there, did you feel that? And Barrie, when did you start to sense that was going to be happening?
I'll jump in first and let Barrie take over, because he was through the whole 5 of them. But one thing that Kevin had said, and I remember him saying this, is that they learned how to win from the Eskimos. They learned that relationship. I think if you remember, they always had the grand night, that Monday night, how everyone had to show up after a game on Sunday. All the Eskimos had to show up. And they had the dunce cap, and they had all that. And they made it such a reunion, not a union, but such a union, that when Kevin spoke at the 2000 induction into the team's induction into the, I think it was the Sports Alberta Hall of Fame, Kevin did say that they learned to develop as a team through watching the Eskimos, and I'll let Barrie take over, because he was there for the whole 5 of them. But that's one thing I always remember.
Do you remember a moment, Staffy, where you went, there's something? Well, of course you had Wade, but you have to put all the other pieces of the puzzle together, and that's not easy. But can you kind of pinpoint maybe where you thought, I think I can feel something really special going on here?
Well, I think what you have to look at is the foundation of the team and the core group of players that we had there. I firmly believe that. I mean, Glenn was the architect or the patriarch of the dynasty, and he's the one that knew how to manage the personalities. But the one foundation of all those guys, the key people in that group, from Wayne to Mark to Paul to Charlie, Huddy, Dr. Greg, Grant, Andy, all those guys, the core group of that team was their families. They all grew up in good families. They all had good parents, and at the time you're growing up, you don't think about that, but it had a huge influence on all those guys, the character of those people. And back in that day, families were included in a lot of the activities that we did around the city. It would be, you'd regularly see Paul's dad would come in from Toronto, or Mark's brother would be around, or Mark's family was very close. And, in Vancouver, we'd spend time with Glenn Anderson's mom and dad at the rink. And it was a family atmosphere, and the character of the people. I think it was the perfect storm in that respect. Although everyone has their own personality and their own family, but there were so many things in common. The character of the people was the key to that. And then they just kind of grew and learned off each other. And Glenn was sort of the conductor of the whole group.
I'll take that even further.
Okay.
And taking it from one, that is my mom would always be, Kevin always make sure Mom came to everything. And she and Betty Coffey became very good friends. Well, Betty Coffey was at my daughter's graduation, not graduation, when she was baptized. So that goes back to show you how close the relationship was. We met Betty at Amanda's first communion, but her when she was baptized.
So I just kind of, to answer your question, I came in as a young guy, and the team was very successful. I just kind of learned through the law of the wolf pack just to shut up and watch and learn. But I think it was after the Islanders, the infamous 4, when we lost the Islanders.
Yep.
That the next year, the start of the next season, and it was very distinct. It's a distinct memory in my mind. And this is to answer your question about when did I think something special was going to happen. Is the first game against the Islanders the year after they had beaten us, Mark was facing off against Brian Trottier, and at the time Brian Trottier was arguably one of the best players in the game, one of the best leaders in the game, very respected guy, hardworking guy, and he was there's no doubt the leader of the Islanders dynasty team. And Mark was facing off against Brian Trottier, and as soon as the puck was dropped, he cross-checked him in the head, he cross-checked him in the shoulders, and knocked him right down to his knees. And it was scary to see, but that was the turning point for me. I thought, well, these guys better be ready, because this group of guys, they've come into their own, and we're on a mission. And to me, that's when I really started paying attention and understanding that, things were going to change.
It's interesting, as an outsider, I'm from Vancouver. What I knew of the Oilers is they would come into Pacific Coliseum and beat the Canucks for fun. And who's this little Gretzky guy that nobody can seem to hit? I got here in '89 in time for that last cup run. But when I look at those teams, at least for somebody my age, I can't think of a greater team of assembled individuals that went on to team success. I mean, you had the best player in the game. You had the second best player in the game in Messier. You had the best defenseman. You can go right down the list. That doesn't necessarily guarantee success. Looking from afar, I was wondering, what is this Glenn Sather doing to keep everything together, handling the group? The players play the game, I get that, but how big a hand was, you touched on it, Barrie, just Glenn's way of knowing how to bring out the best in people, have them play for each other, their strengths, cover up the weaknesses. How big a hand did Glenn have? Because he sure had a lot of talent to work with, but it guarantees nothing.
Well, let Kenny weigh in first. when he because we obviously Ken knew Glenn, and Ken used to hang around the dressing room with us with Kevin. So to his point, we were all very good friends. Dwayne Mandrusiak and the training staff worked closely together. So Kenny was around the team quite a bit before he came to work with us. But then, then he experienced it full hand when he became a staff member. And, people in pro sports and on a team like we had, or NHL team, CFL team, NFL, work very, very closely together. And there's no secrets behind the dressing room door. But Kenny, just kind of to answer Robin's question about, after spending a little bit of time with Glenn and then getting immersed in the Glenn Sather culture, I'd like to hear your comments on that.
We went from
Glenn is a very good friend of ours, and he was a mentor to, I'm sure, both of us. But just to get Kenny's views on, once you're in the trenches with the guy.
It was said, and I think it was my younger brother who said it. He said it was John Muckler who had the mind of the game, and he says we probably don't win without John. But Glenn was he kept everyone close. He reminded me of his Norm Kimball. Okay, he reminded me so much of Norm Kimball. I've always said I was lucky to work with two of the greatest general managers in the game in hockey and football. And one thing I'll always say about Glenn, is that he was so intense when it was game, but the day after, it was gone. Didn't matter what happened, stuff like that. He had a smile on his face, and let's move on. And that's one thing that I really appreciated Glenn. And I felt that Glenn was everyone's dad. Okay, he taught those guys how to dress. He taught them when to go out. You did not celebrate in Edmonton the night after you lose a hockey game. Okay, and that's the sort of things. And Barrie will be able to explain more being with them. But that's how I saw Slats. As being a father figure to all of them.
Got to ask this from two different perspectives, because you guys had two different jobs inside that locker room. And we'll start with you, Kenny. You had on the football team Danny Ray Kepley, who, as tough as they come, tough as nails. But you had some tough guys on that Oilers squad when you were there. Can you compare the two? And who were the toughest guys of them all when you were with the Oilers in particular?
I know it sounds prejudiced, but I'll have to say my younger brother.
Yep.
What he played through, many times I say he was foolish beyond the doubt with what he was playing with. But when I looked further ahead, there was Danny Ray Kepley, and there was no one who was tougher, meaner than anyone. And Danny Ray Kepley was the godfather of that team, okay? And I remember there's this little story about Danny, my rookie season, and Danny was playing with a dislocated shoulder. He had dislocated his shoulder at training camp, and he was popping it in and out himself. And whenever I'd go talk to doctors about it, they would go and talk to him, and they'd come back and say, Danny says, I don't know what I'm talking about. He called me the kid. He said, the kid doesn't know what he's talking about. Halfway through the season, if you remember, we're 2-5, I think it is, and Danny's struggling. And Hugh Campbell comes in and sits down with Dr. Dick Cherry and I and talks to us about Danny Ray, about his shoulder. And he asks us, did you think give him a couple weeks to time off to get the shoulder strong would be helpful for him? We said, well, absolutely. You're able to get some of the swelling down, maybe some of the strength back down. And so Hugh got up and looked at us. He said, okay, you tell him. He walked out. Danny Ray Kepley never missed a game. So from a football's perspective, the toughest was Danny. There's no one who came closer, and he led by example. And then I look in hockey, and I say, Kevin was really tough with some of the things that he played with. Jason Smith, there's no question he ranks right up there. And Ryan Smith, Smitty, he played with a hell of a heck of a lot. He broke his ankle, and we had him on skates 12 days later. That's with the doctors and everything we're doing, but that involves a lot of toughness.
Well, when I worked with you guys in my time with the Oilers, Mike Greer always used to surprise me because he had that wonky shoulder, and you would stand in that hallway, and Staffy, you can jump in on this too because you've seen it. he would come off the ice and he'd be favoring that shoulder, and I'd watch him go down that hallway into the locker room, and one of the doctors would follow him in, and he'd go right into the training room, and I tried not to hear any sounds, and he would come out like he was the $6 million man, had been refixed, went out, and he would just go out and bang guys again, and it just seemed that team, while it wasn't successful in terms of wins and losses, man, there were some tough guys there then.
Yeah, there was. Danny, Gersey was. I've got to put him up to that in part of that group, and that's the difference as in perspective as I see from today. Mikey played 2 seasons like that. We put a harness on him and stuff like that, and he just kept playing because he did not want to miss playing. Well, I'm away from the game now. I don't see it, but you will see guys, midway through the season having their shoulders done, and I'm going, are they, what are they doing that? Why are they getting it done now? Why can't they wait till the end of the season? That's how I've seen it change.
It's interesting. I think of, Kenny always says, well, it may sound a bit, like he's Kevin Lowe. It was ridiculous. Again, as an outsider, the guys inside the room would know more, but there were more guys. You mentioned Smitty. I remember that leaking ankle. It was still through as he was healing up, there'd be a little teardrop of blood there. And then they sucked us in because they had him in a no-contact jersey in the morning, and that night he came roaring out through the oil derrick like he had a booster rocket in his butt. And we'd specifically asked about jerseys that day, and they oh no, I don't play when you got that jersey on. And out came Smitty that night.
You bastards, you got us, boy.
They don't owe us an explanation. We thought they did. And the other one is this. Was it Trent McCleary of the Montreal Canadiens who got hit in the throat with the slap shot?
Yep.
Not long after that, we were on the road. Igor Ulanov got hit in the throat in Columbus. It wasn't as bad, but it took him off for a couple shifts. A couple days later, our next game was in, I want to say, Madison Square Garden, and he took a puck between the eyes. And he didn't want to leave the bench. The officials had to tell him to go to the medical room. And he got, I think, 22 stitches in the eyebrow or between the eyes. Of course, he swelled up like the Elephant Man on the plane after the game. But at the time we asked him, Igor, why didn't you just get off and go get fixed? My leg, it was not broken. He said, I can play. He was another one of those guys who you go, man, that's like tough.
I've always said that you don't make it to professional sport without having some degree of toughness, okay? Because there'll always be bumps and bruises that you got to play through. Brian Kelly, I used to, the day after game, I would see Brian come in and go, oh, here he goes. What's he going to try to get over at me today? Because he didn't want to go out there. He didn't want to go out the day have to run. Brian was just, but come game day,
it
didn't matter what it was. You couldn't pull him off the field. And I think most professional athletes have that degree. They don't want to be on the bench. You want to be playing. And you have to have some degree of toughness. You don't get into the National Hockey League. You don't get into professional football without having some degree of toughness.
I learned a lot about lactic acid, and we often used to joke about the bath of ice, or as it was referred to by some of the players, the bath of death, where guys would just submerge their lower half of their body, and it would get very, very cold. And we would, Ethan Morrow was a classic example. He loved that. He didn't want to ride the bikes after the game. But guys would watch, and this thing had like icebergs on the water, on the top of the water. Like it was ice cold, and guys would watch him go into that room, and they would look and they would watch. And as he sunk himself slowly in, guys would, oh, I don't know how he does that. Ethan was another tough one. But you know what? To kind of take it over to Barrie now, the toughest guy in that equipment area, I always felt was Barrie. But you did it with a smile on your face, my friend. You had to tell guys you can have that or you can have that, and you had to do it in a way that just seemed to pull everybody together. Did you ever feel it was tough that way?
I was talking to Mike Kruzhelnicki, maybe just a couple of years ago, and we're having a beer after an event when I was doing the alumni stuff, and He says, "Yeah, you really were a cheap bastard." and it sort of took me back, and I thought, well, I'm not a cheap bastard. What do you mean? You're talking, I had a job to do. I mean, that wasn't me. I was doing my job. And it all goes back to the early days of when I started. It was I have 38 years with this company, and I was 28 in the dressing room. I learned on the job. I had no experience, and my boss was Glenn Sather, and he was very clear to me early. And he was quite an intimidating guy, as you know. When I was a young guy, I think it was like 25 years old, right out of school. I expect you to have the lowest budget of any team in the NHL, and okay. Fine. Okay. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'd never, worked in a professional organization. I'd never managed a budget. I had to learn on the job. And so I didn't know any other way. He was very value conscious is what we like to say. I didn't like it when people said he was cheap because he was very value conscious. But I think, through the process, we all learned about responsibility. And I learned about responsibility, that I was responsible to a budget, and I had to look him in the eye at the end of the year when I finished my budgets and to see where our expenses were. So I just had to come up with creative ways to try and get people to think about the fact that, this stuff costs money. And, we would never, and I don't think Glenn would ever hold back, and I know for a fact we would never hold back from what the players needed to because we're all teammates and we wanted to win. I mean, I'm not going to tell Wayne Gretzky he can't tape 4 sticks up. I mean, that's not my job as a trainer, but or as an equipment guy. I mean, back then we used to call ourselves trainers, and the medical trainer and the equipment manager worked together as a team. Peter Miller and myself, and then Kenny and myself. It's a little bit more. There's a little bit of a differentiation today. It's more along the football lines where you have a head equipment manager and you have a head medical trainer. There's no doubt, and each have their own responsibilities. And to some degree, they work together today as well. But back then, it was a tighter-knit group of people. And I guess what I'm getting at is that, we learned about teaching responsibility to the players and that things did cost money. But you had to come up with creative ways to get people to think about that. And it was hard. It was challenging at a time. You really had to think about.
I can tell you one thing for sure, that gentleman beside me, he would give you the shirt off his back for anything, as long as it wasn't an Oilers shirt. Okay, he's so honest. It's and a little story. Kevin went to New York, and I remember his first year coming back, and Kevin had phoned me, and he said, "Can you come pick me up?" Because I got quite a few bags with the kids and stuff like that, and his hockey bag came off, and a dozen sticks came off with it. He looked at me and he said, "Wouldn't Barrie just shit?" And I started laughing.
It's funny you should say that too, because I remember when Glenn had gone to New York and had come back, and the Rangers were here for their very first game, and I remember talking to Glenn, and he asked me, he says, in your community relations duties, what is your budget for golf shirts? And I said, why are you asking? Because the budget for golf shirts with the New York Rangers was more than my entire budget for everything for the whole year. Because he said, you know what, you got to look after the guy in the parkade on Fifth Avenue, so you slide him a couple of shirts and you make sure you got the same spot. But Staffy, there's also the story, and I thought I'd heard them all. There's the story about the Laces and Kevin on Hockey Night in Canada games that I heard for the very first time at our Toast of the Town. You want to say that one?
Well,
and you can say it word for word. This is podcasting, because it made me laugh so hard when I heard that story.
Well, everybody kind of knew that, the core group of guys knew that. I mean, I would never, ever hold anything back from the veteran players for sure. These guys were my friends, and they were, contributing members of the team. And so I'm not, like I said, I'm not telling Mark Messier he can't have a new pair of skates, or Wayne or any of the guys, the veteran guys that have earned it. I mean, they can do whatever they want. But as we progress through, guys that always give me a hard time for being a cheap bastard, right? And I'm thinking, well, it's not me, man. It's my job. And I was really just trying to teach responsibility. And yeah, I was responsible to a budget too. But I mean, it was more, I think, tongue-in-cheek, and we had a lot of fun with it. So, Kevin, I think he was the captain at the time, or, this is a real story about that. So every game, Kevin Lowe would change his skate laces. Every game. He had to break, he would want a new pair of skate laces. Well, I don't give a shit about skate laces, really. I mean, what were they cost? $1.50 or something. It was irrelevant. But so they get in a routine, and all these guys have routines, every single one of them, and you get to, like I said, you're in a room with these guys 24 hours a day almost. You get to know every little idiosyncrasy and personality, and so on a game day, it's a serious day, everybody's in their routine. Well, Kevin would change his laces every game, which is fine. I mean, he was a veteran player. He could do whatever he wanted. I don't care. I wouldn't say boo. But the funny part is they get kibitzing around and talking and yakking, and he would take his laces, take the little sleeve off the laces, and throw them towards the garbage can, which was close to his. And they 9 times out of 10 they'd fall on the floor. So I'd walk by, and we had an unwritten rule. Everybody took pride in the room. It was like your living room. Like we all took pride in the room. So I'd walk by, pick up the lace thing, and throw it in the garbage. And players would never throw tape or anything on the floor. It would be disrespectful. They would walk over and pick it up and throw it in the garbage can. So, it was more like for fun. So he about the third time I go, well, put the bloody thing in the garbage. You got a bad shot. Like, hit the garbage can. It's right there. So then I came up with this funny idea. So I took the frickin' sleeve that held the laces together, and then because he would change them every game, so I would go and take the laces that he was taking out of his skates to put new ones in, and I'd slowly sneak them away, because he actually threw, it was not only the sleeve, but it would be the laces he'd throw towards the garbage can, and they'd end up on the floor. So I grabbed the laces, and then I rewrapped them, and I put them in the frickin' little sleeve. And, because they were only used for one game, you could hardly tell. They were like brand new. They might have a little mark here or there. So I kind of fashioned them so that they looked real, and I put it real tight. And so I started, they were 84 thin. Like, there's 50 different kinds of laces, but I still remember 84 thins or whatever. So I put the laces in his stall before he walked in. He was always the first guy in the room, 4 o'clock on a game day. Clockwork. So he'd walk in, and he saw these laces, and he'd say, oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Wow.
I got a pair of laces in my stall. Like, Barry's thinking ahead. That's really nice. So he would go through his ritual and take the laces out and put them in his skates and use them. And I was just pissing myself laughing because, he didn't realize until about the third game, the third time. It didn't last long. Holy shit, did he freaking give it to me. And we were laughing. It was more like a joke, right? It was fun, but Huddy and Coffee would be all over me. You tight bastard, you cheap son of a bitch. Like, how? What do you get a bonus for for keeping the team under budget? Anyway, so it was that was in the mid-season. So we get to Chicago, in Chicago Stadium, and we're playing the conference final, and intense as shit. And it was, it's pretty cool, pretty special at that time of the year. So. But that time in the dressing room before the coach comes in, when everybody's kind of getting ready for the game, was kind of a fun time. It's a cool time. That's the time that Paul Coffey said he missed the most out of all the experiences that he had in hockey, was that 15 or 20 minutes when the team was just in the room together right before the game started, before the coach came in, because they were just themselves. They were teammates. They were having fun. Anyway, so I'm doing my deal. I'm walking around the room. Just got really nothing to do. The players are getting ready. I'm just there to help if they need something. And I walk by the garbage can, and I see these freaking laces, brand new, hanging over the edge of the garbage can, just enough so I could see them. These guys know me, the back of their hand. They know my routines. I'm walking around. I see these laces, and I look back, and I'm thinking, who is throwing out brand new goddamn laces? So I look at the laces. I grab them out of the side of the garbage can. I slowly pull them out, and I'm tugging on them. There's something on there. I pull them out. I pull them up, and there's a sign that they made. And everybody's watching. I don't know. Fuck you, chicken legs. Oh my God. But it was so bloody funny. Jeez, it was funny. We just had, the whole team was in tears laughing. anyway, that was just kind of a simple example of how we kind of they pushed the envelope on the budgeting thing. But really, when it came down to it, it was just about responsibility, and it kind of carried over a little bit more as the core team, the dynasty team left, and everybody softens their stance and start to realize that budgets aren't the only thing. I mean, they never were really the only thing, but it was just more about saying, "Hey guys, just be responsible."
Yep.
I'll always remember those Staffy Brendan Shanahan and his 3 sticks. To this day, I can still see him, and he's staring at me, and he tapes up 3 sticks every game, whether you use them or not.
And who was this? This was
Brendan Shanahan.
And then when was that?
This one with Team Canada.
Gotcha.
And this was back when we were at the World Cup. And I'm looking at him, and he's got to tape up 3 sticks all the time. And I guess coming from Detroit, where he was coming from, he taped up 3 sticks, not a big thing. And I'm listening to Barrie talk to him, and I looked at him. I said, "Brendan, you shan 3 sticks all the time?" He says, "Yeah." "Well, what about the 2 ones you taped up the day before?" He says, "Well, Kenny, I can't use them." "Why can't you use them?" He says, "Well, how do you think they feel? They stood there the whole game, never got used, and am I going to use them now?" And I'm looking at him, and I'm trying to figure, is he serious or is he not serious, or I'm stupid or what? And he turned around and he walked away. To this day, I don't know if he was serious or not, but he taped up 3 new sticks every game, and I go, "What?" I could figure the job that poor Staffy had to do. Like,
wow.
Oh my God,
One thing that sticks with me, well, there's a lot, but speaking of Barrie, you had so many characters over the years. You got to know all the idiosyncrasies of the players, as would Ken. The one thing I remember, beyond that 89 season, because that was my time frame around the team, Jani Niinema. I lost track of the number of times I'd hear, Staffy. It always seemed like Jani needed something adjusted, something wasn't quite right, the seam was chafing his butt or whatever it was. Were there guys like that who were just especially particular about every single piece of their gear, Barrie?
I'm so glad you brought up Jani Niinema. Oh my good Lord. There's a lot of players that were particular. Most are particular, but some are what we call special. And I'll tell you, Stu Poirier, or massage therapist, great friend and great massage therapist, probably the best in the business for a lot of years. Worked in not only with the Oilers but on a lot of Team Canadas with us. He nicknamed Jani Niinema 911. So everybody in hockey has a nickname, as you know.
Yep.
And it was probably the most fitting nickname of all. I will tell you that Jani Niinema was a horse as a player.
Oh, yeah.
That guy was a solid player. Tough, big, physical, moved the puck. You can really depend on him. And he for a lot of years, he was a good player in our team. But I'll tell you what, behind the scenes, 911 is a perfect example of probably daily there would be issues with Jani Niinema. And, after a while, the rest of the team and the players and the staff just kind of roll their eyes. But one of the big things with Jani, and I'll kind of go, we could have a whole podcast about Jani. I love the guy, trust me. I love him. He's a great guy. He's actually working in media right now in Finland and doing a great job. He's come to Brent Sakes games,
yes,
many times to support Brent, and even
longest hockey game.
Those guys there could tell you some funny stories about him too. But the big thing for Jani was time, and being late for practice and late. So in hockey, it's an unwritten rule: if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. I mean, use a little discretion there, but basically that's the way it is. That
was Mac T's rule. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even back to the days of Glenn Sather, if you're not on that bus 10 minutes before it goes, you're late. So Jani Niinema had this thing in his mind: if practice is 11 o'clock, he's going to skate on the ice at 10 seconds to 11 o'clock.
Every time.
Like every time. And most of the players would be on half an hour early, 15 minutes early. They've done their warm-up. They get on the ice. But when the coach starts practice at 11, he's like, you better be ready. Like, he'd skate onto the ice at 11 o'clock. Well, for about, 2 weeks when he first came to the team, we used to have these the coaches started to get on him. Like, you're late. No, I'm not late. No, Yanni, you're late. Wake up. To the point where, and that's where guys like Kenny and I and Spark to some extent would we tried to keep the peace and actually help some of these young guys out once in a while to say, look, Yanni, listen to what they're saying. Like, come in a little bit. No, I'm not late. Okay, I'm telling you, you're late. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Smarten up. It's beyond a joke now. He wouldn't get it. He wouldn't listen. He didn't care. He was hard-headed. And eventually, I hate to say it, but that was one of the reasons that it was the demise of Yanni Niinema. But the other is, like, I could tell you funny stories about one time, I forget exactly what city we were at, but he was trying to, once again, late getting on the ice. And this was for a game. Everybody's got their equipment on. They're all ready to go. They're lined up. He doesn't even have a sweater on. He's just tying his skates up. And the boys are getting ready to go out on the ice. And it's a serious routine. While they're yelling at him, they're pushing him. We're giving him a push. So finally he gets his stuff on. He grabs a sweater. He's trying to put his sweater on just as he's going out the door into the hallway to get on the ice. And he's yelling, Staffy, Staffy, and he's looking for help and trying to get his sweater on. Everybody's laughing. Well, he's got a bloody coat hanger still stuck in his sweater, and it's sticking out sideways. And it's like...
Got to be more thorough than that.
We just, you just shake your head. And but you know what? There was always something going on with Yanni Niinema, always.
Now, in terms of...
When Yanni got traded, and I always remember that he got traded, we were in Calgary.
Yes.
And he got traded to the Islanders, okay? And the players stood around. They sat around and talked for an hour. The Yanniisms, what Yanni did. Remember the time Yanni did this. Remember the time Yanni did that. And the biggest story that I'll always remember is the time Yanni in the playoffs was late for the bus. And he was totally convinced that Colorado had drugged him, okay? And as much as we tried to convince him, how could they drug just you, not the whole team? And if you remember, Staffy, Stlats had to go out and find him some chew, and because his whole afternoon was thrown off, and Dr. Reed was with us, and she was trying to find some sugar tablets that would take away I'm standing there, I'm going, but serious, Yanni, why and how would they simply do? No, he was convinced that Colorado drugged him.
A special guy, though, and a good guy.
Oh, yeah.
Terrific
A lot
guy.
of fun. But
and the fact we're talking about him is it just says he's left a huge mark on all of us. And Kenny, the peculiarities of maybe the way guys looked at things in the equipment room, that would come over into the medical room too, because you had the traditional guys that would be early, the last guy out, but sometimes guys would come in and ask for the craziest things.
When you start going back to there wasn't. I mean, guys, and I think Bill Twilley always said it. They weren't superstitious at all. They were ritualistic.
Yes,
they had their routines. Okay, and you accept that. My brother and the skate laces. To him, the skate laces were tighter when they were new. They all had these different rituals. But that, when it came to my area, it was injury, and then it was different. Okay, we didn't get into rituals or being superstitious. Just could you play? Can't you play? And that was the thing different from my area. But
first guy in seemed to be Kevin a lot.
Yeah.
Last guy out always. Do you remember who was always the last out of the medical room? Was there one guy that always kind of hung around a little bit and was?
Jason Smith was first in those days when he played.
Yeah.
Smitty, I used to always say if Smitty asked to see the doc, I would call 911. Because he played with everything, and Kevin was a lot like that. Too. It was a lot. So I go back and say you have to play with those bumps and bruises.
There's a great picture, I've still got it, of Jason Smith. We are down at the time it was called the Alltel Ice Den. We were in Phoenix, Kenny and his crew had wrapped up Gator. I've got a picture of him sitting on a chair.
Yep.
He's got 1 foot in the ice bucket. He's got 7 different ice bags bound to his body with the blue, the stretchy stuff. And he's sitting there in the sun with a big smile
Out in the
on
back.
his face. It's like, catch a few rays, let the muscles heal. Between Kevin and Jason Smith in a basically a different era, did anybody pack more ice than those two guys out of that training room during your time there?
Smitty was right up there, but Smitty was the one who, we were talking about that at the Hall of Fame, and with the things that we were together with, he broke his jaw, he broke his ankle, he separated his finger, he dislocated his shoulder, he MCL, 3rd degree MCL. I mean, we spent a lot of time with Smitty, but
we can rebuild him.
Exactly, but he was there all the time. When we talk about Smitty, everyone's got a nickname. That was Ryan Smith.
Yeah,
he was tough. So I go back and I have to look at the players and stuff to see. Like you brought up Mikey Greer, and of course, how can you forget Mikey Greer? How about little Toddy Marchand?
Another tough guy.
You had a lot of these guys that had to play that way, and they knew that. I think in Gator, Jason Smith's perspective, he knew his game was a physical game. He knew that to stay in the National Hockey League, that's what he had to do, and he couldn't be hurt.
Before we ask you what you're doing now, and with the Hall of Fame careers that you guys have had, is there one thing that sticks out more than anything? One achievement? Is it a Stanley Cup? Is it a gold medal at any of the events that you guys have gone to? Is there one thing, or is it just all blend together? I don't even know who I want to start with. Who wants to pick that one up right off the top? Is there one thing where you go, I don't think I can ever top that?
I'll speak first because I think they all blend together.
Okay.
To me, because they were, one thing I always said about the difference to me in between football and hockey, you got to rejoice your wins, okay? In hockey, you don't, okay? Especially in the playoffs. You want to get playoff game, yay, next day you're back in it,
yeah.
Okay? In football, you had a couple days to rejoice, okay, before you got back at it and start over again. So I say they all seem to blend, but one of my biggest accomplishments or thrills, more of my biggest thrills, was getting an invitation to Warren Moon's induction into the National Football League Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And I only had Warren for 4 years, and that's years later. And to this day, I cherish that so much. And I want to go on a little bit further than that. Why I even cherish it so much is that I had kept the invite, and unfortunately I couldn't go because with family it was 206, and we were going to Europe to celebrate, and that was the same day we were flying to Europe. And I kept the invitation for years, okay? And I was going to do something with it, typical. I got to do, and typically by the time I figure out to do something, I've lost it, okay? And the reason I remembered it is I go into my good friend Dwayne Mandruziak's office, and he has an invite also. And he has taken that invite and he's had it done framed in different sequences.
Yep.
And I said, Jesus, Dwayne, I wanted to do that. Darn it, but typical me, I went and lost it. And he says, Kenny, I got a copy of that. I said, you sure? I said, I got a copy. I'll get one done. I said, please get it done. And I'll pay anything for it. A couple months later, I'm down there and I'm walking out. And he says, oh, Kenny, he said, I got something for you. And he runs down and he gets me the framed picture. And he brings it to me. And I said, how much do I owe, Dwayne? And he said, no, that's from me. I said, you are such a good friend. A month later, I'm back there again. I'm looking in his office. I go, his picture's gone. The Warren Moon framed picture.
You're kidding.
Signed it. I said, Dwayne, where is your picture? He goes, oh, I took it home. I said, you took it home? Where'd you put it at home? Well, it's in my basement right now. I said, I'm going to phone Allison. You little bugger, you gave me his. And a little smile came on his face. I said, you gave me his. That shows you the relationship we had all throughout the,
Well, yeah, that's special, huh?
Yeah. He's a special person.
And Staffy, with you, man, the accomplishments. I think Wayne Gretzky, I think the night of his banner raising in the green room, and you could walk by, and Wayne said, he's got to be the most accomplished Edmonton Oiler in terms of everything you had won through your career doing what you did with the Edmonton Oilers, and that's coming from Wayne. Is there one thing that kind of sticks out for you, or is it, as Ken said, it's just such a blur and there's so many great memories?
Well, there is one thing, and, keeping everything in perspective, when you think about, face it, I'm a lucky guy in a lot of ways. I came along at a good time. I just happened to be, it was like almost the perfect storm. But because of the success of the Oilers and the Cup teams, that led to all the Canada Cups. And, I think I was part of, as a teammate, a training staff, support staff member of probably 13 or 14 championship teams, including, but all those things do blend together, and I don't take it for granted. Don't take 5 Stanley Cup championships for granted. Trust me. But I do have a hard time sort of differentiate from one from the other. I'm getting to be an old bastard here, but the one thing I will say that really had a solid influence in my life and probably helped me, that I kind of had a big influence on what I did moving forward was May 19th, 1984. That's the Oilers' first Stanley Cup in Rexall Place. I stood on that little corner of the bench. That was my second year in the NHL. I worked in the minors one year, so I was under contract. I wasn't really working for the team directly. So in my first year in the NHL, we went to the Stanley Cup final and lost. The second year, we won the Cup. I was new to the team. I was just a fringe part of the team, I think, at that time. But like any kid in Canada, any hockey playing person, whether you're a coach, a trainer, of course, the players, managers. Your goal in hockey is to be on a Stanley Cup championship, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Any young Canadian guy or hockey player, and I always wanted to be a hockey player. I always, hockey was my life even to that point, and I was just happy to contribute as part of the training staff. But I was standing on that bench in that little corner, and I've said for years, I had the best seat in the house for how many years. And I'll never ever forget that feeling, and it's overwhelming, and it's had a huge influence, probably in my professional life. And I was fortunate to work only for one company for all these years, but in my professional life, that was probably something that I'll never ever forget. And even though I had many other experiences like that, winning championship, that probably had the biggest impact on my life.
We've only got a couple of minutes here, so let's quickly talk about what you're doing now, and we'll start with you, Ken. What are you doing? Just chilling, relaxing? You like to keep busy? I know you do.
I'm retired. I've been retired now for Peter Sorelli made sure of that, unfortunately. But that was the right time, the right place, to be honest.
So, and you keep him busy, though?
Yes. As of last night was the first night that I was behind the bench for the SSAC Midget AAA hockey team. They need a trainer for the rest of the season, so I'm going to do it. So I'm looking forward to it. 3 years ago, I got a call from Paul Coffey. I'll never forget that. And he asked me the question. He said, has your brother talked to you yet? And I said, no, why would my brother talk to me? I was afraid. He said, well, I'm coming to town, and he's leading me into something. And I say, what are you getting at, Paul? He says, well, we're coming to town for a tournament, hockey tournament. And I go, mm-hmm. He says, we need a trainer. And I'm going, seriously, Paul, seriously? He goes, no, we do, really. It's a John Reed Memorial. I still don't know what the John Reed Memorial is. And he says, seriously, we need a trainer. Our trainer can't come. I went, so I'm thinking to myself, okay, bantam hockey. When I played bantam hockey, we played 3 15-minute periods. The last 5 minutes of the third period was stop. Okay, so what? Be an hour. Okay, sure, I'll do it. I want to ask Kev. I said, you mind? He said, now go. I get there first game. I don't realize now it's all 3 periods, 20 stop. doing the ice in between. It's a 2-hour time slot. Okay, we had two games on Saturday, 2 games on Friday, 1 game on Saturday, and we won the tournament following days. This is Johnny Reed Memorial Tournament. So I was so excited to see these kids, and I mean kids, they're kids, how big, how strong, how fast they were. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking forward to working with these kids. Our record's not too good right now. We're 0-14-3, so
Keep having some fun though with it.
I think we'll have fun with it, exactly.
And Staffy, multiple myeloma. Do you want to get into that?
Well,
It's been a tough one for you, but man, you're battling hard.
well, once again, keeping things in context, training staff as a whole generally are blue collar workers, and we worked in a white collar world. And I came along as did Kenny, at a great time in the history of our organization. And but we're behind the scenes guys. We're behind the scenes guys, and that's where we're comfortable. And we work in an environment where we're very close to the media as well. As we know, most of the media members of this, kind of work the same hours, long hours. I would say low pay, but I mean that's all relative.
Got them fooled.
That's not an issue. But
Comparatively
but
speaking.
what I'm saying is we had a lot in common with the media. It's a behind the scenes job in a public business, and we don't. We're not in the public, and we're not public figures, and there's no need for us to be public figures. But because of that, we put our nose down, go to work. We don't get too caught up in all the publicity of what goes on publicly in the world. And it wasn't until I left the training business that after a couple of jobs, the last job I had was a great job working for the alumni. And, a job that I guess one of my colleagues said, you have auditioned for this job your entire life. You get to work with all these great people. And that was the thing for me. I still do. I have an association with a lot of great people in the Oilers organization, a lot of the former players. But because of the alumni, and because of which I hadn't spent a lot of time with, and I didn't understand how the concept of all these charities work and the amount of time and effort that these guys put into helping other people, that it's really opened my eyes up to the importance of giving back, which a lot of our players do that people behind the scenes aren't even aware of. They almost every player has given a lot of their time to help other people and charities. I ran into a bit of a tough go there, probably in 2011. I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma out of the blue, something I'd never even heard of. I don't want to get into details, but the fact is it was a private thing, and I didn't really, I kept it very private, and we just dealt with it in our family and our close friends. And it wasn't until I got involved with the alumni group, especially with Glenn Anderson, who's around quite a bit, and some of the guys that were contributing to our appearances, that I got involved with the Cross Cancer Institute, which I've spent many, many, many hours in the Cross. And, thanks to the Cross, the doctors, the researchers, I'm 8 years now in remission, and knock on wood, that's going to continue. But I'm involved right now in which I spend a lot of my time with. Besides spending time with my family, my mother is 86 years old. I'm driving to Banff today to go celebrate with her. I've had time to spend with my family and my close friends but I have a passion for helping people with multiple myeloma, and I just feel obligated to do that because I am so lucky that I have a healthy life right now. I'm involved with the Cure Cancer Foundation. It's a brand new foundation. It's a group of passionate people that really care about helping people who have been living in a world of cancer, and we're all touched by cancer at some point. I don't want to get on my soapbox here, but it's a great group of people that are pillars of the community, successful business people, and they give their efforts on a voluntary basis to help people with cancer. I was lucky that we had a Toast of the Town event last year. Bryn was very helpful in that part of our committee. I've worked with Hockey Helps the Homeless with Ronnie Lowe, and Robin is a big part of that. So charity work is a big part of what I like to do, and we are working right now on the Toast of the Town event. We have a prominent Edmonton Oiler that we are going to honor this year. There's going to be a public announcement made in early January.
You don't want to say anything about that now, do you?
No, I don't.
Good for you.
But what I will say is one of my closest friends and colleagues in the business, his name is Brian Anstice. He's also in remission from, he was a former owner, general manager of Prison Flow Products. Just a great guy, hardworking, dedicated person, family man. He came up with a slogan that we use as our slogan today for the Cure Cancer Foundation, specifically the toast of the town, which is, the decisions you make today save lives tomorrow. And I can guarantee, and I know for a fact, that we have saved lives, and we're going to continue to save lives for many years down the road.
When we get closer on that, we'll have you back on, and we'll go into depth. And the special person who will be toasted will have to get on this podcast as well. Okay, we'll just kind of leave it at that. We're out of time. You want to go first? Let me go first, and then you can just wrap this up.
Sure.
The time I spent with you guys working behind the scenes, it was one thing to be in the media, but to spend those 4.5 years with you guys was a very special time for me. I thank you for that. And I learned a lot. Man, did I learn a lot being able to go behind the curtain a little bit. So I want to thank you guys for coming in today. Robin sees it from a different perspective, from a media perspective, and the media always loved working with you guys.
Well, I first walked in to Rexall when I got here in December of '89. Right off the plane, I followed Jim Matheson into the rink at that time. I left the beat in 2007 after 9 straight seasons covering the team as the beat guy, both at the Sun and the Journal. Ken Lowe, Barrie, Stafford, watch them and others. There's many that make the machine go behind the scenes. Was always amazed at the hours they put in, always amazed that they understood that the players were in the spotlight and they just made it work. I've always had a great admiration for the both of you, actually for everybody in the profession that does the heavy lifting behind the scenes. And now that years have gone by quickly and that we're all kind of retired, there's still more to come, but I will never forget those watching you guys work. I'm proud to know you. That's all I can say right now.
And just before you jump in here, and I know you guys want to, 2 quick comments. Sparky was another guy we had so much fun with.
I was just going to say we cannot. Sparky. He was the one who educated our players, and we saw what the education was sometimes. But there's a very, very, very special spot for him.
And Joey.
Yes.
And Joey and Daryl Duke and all the guys
you're right.
All the guys that went through. There's a picture of you guys standing out on the ice that I keep in my computer. I scour the internet for this stuff. If I didn't see it when it was first taken, I'll find it. And you look at those faces, and some of them are gone now. And you realize how quickly the time moves. Yeah. And I think you grab each day. I think you learn this too late in life. Grab each day and enjoy it, because we're not guaranteed anything, and there's been a lot of good days so far, hopefully more.
And Staffy, I interrupted you. You were going to say?
We were all thinking about Sparky when Robin was talking there. I mean, Lyle Sparky Kolchiski. He's a hockey legend. He's a hockey legend. And you know what? He was as big a part of our team, training staff team, and of the Oilers organization as any guy in that room. And he's a close friend of some of the greatest players that ever played in staff, including Wayne and Mark and all of us. I mean, we see Sparky regularly. He's doing really well, and he's a big part of our team.
You know, Rob, I take a look now and say, and I say I've been very fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time. It was in Grey Cups, Stanley Cups, World Championships, Olympics. And the thing that I take from that is the friendships that I developed with Dwayne Mandrusiak, with Barrie Stafford, with Sparky, with our very close friend, and everyone knows Red, Gordon Batty, who's in the hospital in Green Bay after suffering a heart attack, Peter Miller. Those those people are the closest part of my life besides my family. And there's all the cups in the world, they don't mean anything that all those people mean. That's what it's all about.
We could have gone for another hour. Our paths are always going to cross, and there's always a special friendship. And thanks for coming in today.
Oh, our pleasure. It's
Our
been
pleasure.
a lot of fun.
Yep.
A lot of fun.
Thanks, fellas.
Big thank you to Ken Lowe and Barrie Stafford for dropping into the studio to share some stories. That was a blast today. Really enjoyed it.
Could you not shoot the shit with those guys all day long?
You could.
We have.
Actually, we have. Over a horrible cup of coffee, I'm sure that was served up in the Oiler locker room back in the day when you had that one blend. Not the 20,000 blends you have now. It was that one blend that just tasted the same every day. But you know what? We liked it.
It was the company.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. So thanks to the boys for showing up today. We do appreciate that. And a couple of things. You can email us at mightymouth@shaw.ca. That's how you can reach us with your feedback. We would love to hear from you. And also make sure you tell your friends and subscribe or hit the RSS button on your feed to make sure that you get our podcasts quickly and weekly when we pump them out for you. It'll be fun. And the feedback we've been getting has been great. And I'm really looking forward to the upcoming new year and some of the guests that we're going to have. That's it, Robin.
See you next time, man.
Yeah, I know. Are you all talked out? You all tired after all that?
Nah, I got plenty more to say.
Well, we'll say it again next week. So please make sure you join us, okay? Thanks.
Proceeding was recorded earlier because we were ashamed to do it now.